Welcome to 40 Dates in 40 Days. I'm Sarah Beth, your host. I recently turned 40 and decided to go on 40 dates in 40 days in hopes of finding my person. I'll be documenting this in close to real time and wondering right along with you, will she meet someone? So grab your cup of tea, we are going to spill it, settle in, it is time to yap. Welcome back to 40 Dates in 40 Days. This is episode 5. It is a recap episode of week 3 of dates. So we're going to dive in. It was a bad week. I will say that up front, which is why my tea for today, this mug says, "You are so beautiful." I inherited this when I moved into my current house, and I thought it was appropriate for this week's episode because sometimes you have to remind yourself of your own worth. You have to motivate yourself. I do this sometimes on the tip jar. If I post something, I will just message myself from my other account, something really positive and encouraging. And even knowing that it comes from me, it still kind of lifts my spirits a little bit. So I hope you find your own "You are so beautiful" mug or experience or something to just give yourself a little pat on the back today. And have a good day. All right, before we dive into recapping this fairly horrendous week of dates, I, of course, want to start with a bad date story and a good date story. The bad date story comes from one of my good friends, but I had not heard this story before, and I laughed out loud. She sent it in. So I will read it to you. She says, "My favorite bad date was a guy I met on a dating site. He came to church for the Easter concert. He was way shorter than what he had said, and he told me he had shrunk when he was serving overseas. LOL. She said, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he would not shut up during the concert. And then, to top it all off, we were given little flashlights to use during one of the songs. He put said flashlight in his mouth." And proceeded to smile at everyone around us, lighting it up behind his teeth. I have never been so mortified. People were moving away from us because he was so ridiculous. Glad that one never worked out. Then later she said, "I remember thinking at one point that it's not that far a jump off the balcony if I need a quick getaway." This story, literally cracked me up. I just thought it was so funny. It's funny to me, of course, knowing her, but I also went to that church for a while, so I can envision the church, and it reminds me of one of my worst dating stories of all time. Also took place at that church. I had just moved to town, and this was my second week at the church. This was long ago, and it was so long ago, I was on Yahoo Personals. This was before dating apps, before online dating was socially acceptable. Long ago. And I had no business being on these apps, but I watched You've Got Mail and Must Love Dogs, and I was new to town and I was bored and lonely, so I was like, why not? I've always had a little bit of an adventurous bone in my body, I suppose. So connect with this guy. He lived about 2 hours away in another state, but about 2 hours away. And he said, well, I'll just come meet you. And I said, well, why don't you go to church with me? And he said, okay. Bear in mind, this is a very traditional Baptist church. I've only gone there for 2 weeks, and this man shows up dressed in head to toe denim, reeking of cigarette smoke, with a ponytail down his back. Now, I'm not passing any judgment on any of those things, but as a 21-year-old in a brand new church, I was not prepared for that, and frankly was a little concerned about what people might think of me by association. So anyway, we sit through church, and at this point in my life, I did not have good boundaries. I didn't know that I could say no to things. I felt obligated to a man who'd driven 2 hours to meet me. So he said, well, do you want to go get lunch? So we go get lunch, and he starts telling me about things he did as an adult in the 80s. And I was thinking, I knew you were older than me, but how much older than me? Like, he's telling me about a tour he went on or something in 1989. I was four years old. And then he told me he had children, which I think I did know should have been a deal breaker for me at 21, but again, I don't really have boundaries at this point. And so he starts telling me about his children, and they were like 13 and 14 or something, closer to my age than apparently he was. I don't know what age his profile said, but not whatever he was. And so should have ended the date at lunch, but then he said, do you want to go catch a movie? And I said, okay. So we go over to the movie theater. I will never forget, Tokyo Drift was playing in the theaters. That's what we went to see. He said, well, we have a little time before the movie starts. Do you want to just walk around the mall? I said, sure. So we're walking around the mall. He said, there is a jewelry store over there. Why don't we go in and I'll see if I can figure out what kind of ring you would like. Oh my gosh. So we go in to this jewelry store and he picks out this gold band with this tiny little solitaire on it. And he's like, I think you would like that one. I said, no. So I go over, I'm playing this up a little bit for his benefit, but not a lot. I mean, my personality, I like blingy things. So I go over to the platinum case, pick out this giant rock with baguettes all around it. And I was like, oh, I like this one. The salesperson is just laughing at this whole encounter. So we went to the movie, we go our separate ways. Honestly, it is God's grace that nothing terrible happened to me in this era of my life because I was so dumb. I didn't make good decisions, not intentionally. I just didn't know any better. So he wanted to see me again and he like owned a horse farm or something. And I made up some excuse. I'm allergic to horses, which is true. Probably not the deal breaker that I made it out to be, but I just said, I don't think this will work out. And that was the end of that. I went back though to look at his pictures because I was like, how did I miss this waist length ponytail? And in one picture, you could kind of see the outline of it behind his head, but you really had to be looking. And again, everybody's got their unique style and there's room for it. That is the spice of life, variety. But for me, at 21 years old, at that stage of my life, in that particular situation, it was not at all what I was looking for. So my friend, I know she was a little bit older than that when this story happened, but still, don't take dates to that church is the moral of the story. All right, well, nobody sent in any good date stories this week, so this is your reminder. Good or bad, would love to hear your stories. Please send them in, DM, email me, however you want to get me the story. I would love to hear it if you're willing to share. So I had to go back in my archives and try to find another good date. And this is sort of a conglomeration of dates, but when I first moved to Nashville, there were a couple places that were arcades. There still are, but the two places that I always went are no longer in business. One was Two Bits, which was on Demonbreun, if you're familiar. The other was HQ Beercade, which is downtown. And I loved going there because there was something to do. And whether you went to arcades or Two Bits had a lot of card games. So I would like modify a trivia game with a guy, or we'd play our own version of Cards Against Humanity. You know, it's not a two-player game, but we'd figure it out. So it was just always a fun activity date that you weren't locked in. Like if you'd gone to, I don't know, Top Golf, you're kind of there for a while, but this was just a low-key activity. It was always fun. So whenever I had to pick the date back then, those were my go-to places and we always had a good time. But on one of those dates, I met a guy who was just visiting his buddy. He was in the Army and he was visiting his friend who had just gotten stationed at Fort Campbell. And he said, our date was going well. Well, his buddy was on a different date. He said that their date ended. Do you care if he comes over and hangs out with us? And I was like, no. So his friend came over. His friend's name is Ray. Ray and I are friends to this day. He's one of my good buddies, and I never talked to that guy again. He's married to somebody else now. But his friend that joined us on the date, Ray, and I are still friends, and we played games that night, and it was just fun. So that was a good date that turned into a good friend. All right, this week in the apps, before I dive into my recap, I've mentioned a few things that are recurring themes in the apps. One that I've not brought up yet is when people say they're fluent in sarcasm. Man, I hate that. I mean, I can be sarcastic with the best of them, but if you feel the need to use your precious profile space to say that you're fluent in sarcasm, first of all, it's not original. I see that every fifth profile. Second of all, what I really think you're saying is that you're a jerk and that you hurt people's feelings. And so you are giving a disclaimer that I'm very sarcastic. So if you get your feelings hurt, that's on you. That's how I read that. Is that fair? I don't know, but I'm not going to probably find out because best case scenario, you're not original or creative, which is why you use phrases that are on every fifth profile. So that's my little rant about the apps today. I saw a guy, I did not swipe right on him, but I saw his profile. He said in his bio, narcissistic women will not be tolerated. This is another thing, like when people say no drama, I assume you are the drama. When you, again, feel the need to use your precious profile space to call out something negative, something that you definitely do not want, that really says more to me about you than anything else. So it's like narcissistic women will not be tolerated. So I scroll sometimes just out of curiosity. I scroll to the bottom. He has this basically naked picture. It cuts off right where it has to cut off. I mean, he's jacked. It's a good picture, but my thought is, are the women you're dating the narcissist? Or is the person posting this naked picture on a public forum the narcissist? I'll let you decide, but I wasn't going to find out again. I also matched with a guy that I went out with in DC 5 years ago. We're going to talk about him later, but this has happened before, and I don't know how the dating app's algorithm works, so I can't possibly offer an explanation about this, but I wonder, he and I talked about it, and we wondered, is it because we've matched before, the algorithm thinks we should see each other? Maybe that's why I see the same people 10 years later, or is it because his phone number was in my phone? I never delete a text thread, so I had the text from 5 years ago. So I don't know, but that was so funny. We are, 600 miles away or something from DC? I don't know. A long way. And here he is again, popping up in my queue. So again, we'll talk about him more. But that's kind of what has been going on in the apps this week. So let's dive in to my dates. Again, not a banner week. It was rough. Monday started out well. Actually, this was my first nominated date, and it was really fun. It was really refreshing to go out with someone who knew what I was doing and I could just be open, and we talked about it and we laughed and he asked questions, and it just was really nice. Like I said last week in my new tactic of trying to lead with it and find guys that I just think it'd be fun. We might like each other, we might not, but let's just go have a good time. This was a good example of how that works because he was nominated. So he did know, and it really just like set the tone and made it a fun date. This is also a reminder, if you have somebody that you would like to nominate, please do. There's a form in my Instagram bio. And again, I'm just trying to find fun people now. So if you're like, I don't know if they're the best fit, but I think they'd have fun, nominate them. And if you're not comfortable with that, if you want to send me their info, I can slide into their DMs. That's my new tactic. It hasn't worked yet, but maybe your person will be the one it works on. So open to that. Would just love to find some more fun people to hang out with. Whether we end up staying together or going beyond the first date or not, let's just have a good time. Okay, so this first nominated date, this was on Monday. We tried to go to Kisser in Nashville, which if you're from around here, you know it's very celebrated, very hard to get into. They don't take reservations, and they're only open for lunch. It's quite annoying, actually. So he suggested it, which I loved, and he said if we can't get in there, there's Flora and Fauna is a coffee shop that has some bites. He said we can go there. I said great, sounds good. So I love that he had a backup plan. That was wonderful. Like I said, we just talked candidly about what I'm doing. We also talked about politics, religion, food, dating. He shared some of his recent dating history. I shared some of mine. It was just real. It was fun. Even though this was the first time we'd met each other, really, we knew people in common, and it didn't feel like a first date per se. It just felt like a fun conversation. And that, after the week prior, was really refreshing. Wish I had bottled up that emotion so it could carry me through the rest of this week. But anyway, he may listen to this because he knows about it. So if you are listening, thank you for being fun. I enjoyed talking to you. Okay, now Tuesday. For the tip jar, I had to head down to the Cloudland Hotel and Macklemore Resort, which is in northeast Georgia, just a little south of Chattanooga. It is a gorgeous property. I just loved it. Their restaurant on site, Old Alliance, was having a 1-year anniversary celebration dinner. So they invited me for that and for a stay. And I was happy to get away. They have this beautiful infinity pool overlooking the mountains. It's on Lookout Mountain if you've ever been down there. It's beautiful. So I was excited to do that, but I thought, well, this is pretty close to Chattanooga and I have friends in Chattanooga. Maybe I can find somebody to come down and be my date for this dinner. So I asked a couple of friends and one had a friend. She said, he's game. I told him about it. He's a little unsure, but he's up for it. And so I said, great. He and I set everything up. Wonderful. He shows up. And first of all, this was so kind. He brought me a birthday gift. He had not listened to the podcast, which turned out to bite him in the butt. He intentionally did not listen because he wanted to ask me questions about it, which I can respect. Back in the day when I thought I was going to marry Tim Tebow, I intentionally did not read his books because I was like, if I ever meet him, I want to ask him questions and not know everything about him. I was a little delulu when I was younger. Anyway, so he hadn't watched the podcast or listened to it, whatever, but he knew I was doing this for my birthday. He didn't realize that my birthday was in January, but he brought this big birthday gift of like glow sticks and pool floats for your drink and googly eyes everywhere. It was really cute and sweet. And I was touched that he put effort into that. I really appreciated it. It kind of went downhill from there. The date was fine. This dinner was with Justin Wines, which if you've not had Justin Wines, they are very good. So Justin of Justin Wines was at this dinner and they sat us with him and his assistant, which was great. I think it might not have been really beneficial for this date as things unfolded, but I enjoyed talking to them. So at the end of the dinner, fortunately, we get through dinner. A lot of wine has been consumed. We're at the end and we finally start talking about this podcast. This is just him and me at this point. Justin and his assistant they're working the room. They're doing their job. So he and I are just sitting there. Dinner is finished and we start talking about the podcast. And again, he knew about it. He'd been sent the info, but he hadn't listened. So we didn't know a lot of the details. So I'm just filling him in, kind of how it's working. And I said, if I meet somebody and we click and we go on a second date or a third date or a fourth date, all that counts as a date. It counts as my 40 until I'm exclusive with someone. And at that point, I'll stop. For some reason, I think he thought I was going on 40 first dates, and me explaining the second, third, fourth until I'm exclusive thing made it worse. I was really confused, honestly. It felt judgmental to me, his response, and it caught me super off guard because I thought he came knowing what he was signing up for. And so we keep talking and he said, this is not a good way to meet someone. And at that point, that's when I started crying. I will say probably 50% of my tears were complete sleep deprivation, frustration just at this whole process. I had just found out that my speed dating the next night was canceled, and I was really disappointed about that, honestly, because it was going to be a break, something new, and wine. So all of those were factors. I think in another scenario, I would have not liked what he said. I might have been snarky back. It would have made me mad, but I wouldn't have cried. Nevertheless, I did cry. And he felt bad. I think he is a nice guy. He just was insensitive and judgmental. Honestly, he tried to make it better. He didn't. Fortunately, like I said, this was the end of the dinner, so we're ready to go anyway. And as he's about to leave, he said, I don't think this was just me. And that did not sit well with me either. I mean, it wasn't. As I just explained, probably 50% of it were extenuating factors that had nothing to do with him. But 50% of it was him. And I did not appreciate the implication, the lack of ownership. He had apologized. So I can't be too hard on him. But I just was like, you knew. You came here knowing what you were signing up for. If this is not a good way to meet someone, why are you here? So anyway, after that, I was just completely frustrated. I did talk to a friend about it later, and she said, I just don't think men realize how much easier it is for women to get dates than men. And I've been thinking about that because he had said, I wouldn't want to date you if I know you're dating all these other people. But a woman on the dating apps, it's pretty easy to date a lot of people. And that is not, she doesn't have to be trying to play them. It doesn't have to be about getting a free meal. I mean, I can pay for my own meals. This very expensive meal was because of my work. But to a man who typically it is harder to find dates, it's just kind of the nature of dating. I could see how he might have that perspective. I think men just do not understand what it's like to be a woman in the dating world and how different our experiences can be. Be that as it may, he did text me the next day. He said, next time you're in Chattanooga, let me know. And I was like, okay. So again, I think he is a kind person, but his approach was really bad for me at that point in time and forever. Okay. So Wednesday, I mentioned the speed dating was canceled. Honestly, I think they didn't get enough dudes to sign up because you can see their reservations on their website if there are still tickets available or not. Women were on a wait list, men still had tickets available. So I think that's what happened. I don't know why it was speed dating for people ages 30 to 45, which is why I was really interested in it. So I don't know. This is the trouble with dating events in general is the men don't come. I've been to a couple, grossly disproportionate numbers, grossly. So the only way to ensure it is more even is to limit tickets. But then if you don't sell enough tickets to whichever gender, the men, then you just have to cancel it. So I was really discouraged about that, the whole situation, crying the night before. I basically had a mental breakdown. I was like, this is terrible. I hate this. This is not fun. I've been on a million terrible dates, only a couple that were decent, and I don't want to do this, but I have to keep going. I'm too far in now. I was in a bad spot that day. But you know what? I posted about it on Instagram and on TikTok, and people were so kind, sending me so many encouraging messages, even on TikTok. They didn't send me messages, but they commented. And you know, if you're on TikTok, people are nasty on TikTok. And those are true strangers. A lot of people that follow me on Instagram either know me personally or they've known me through the tip jar for a long time, so there's some connection there. But TikTok is true strangers, and they were still just really kind, and that made me feel better. And then I went to bed early that night. That also made me feel better. So I was in a little bit better spirits on Thursday and met up with an old friend for coffee. I mentioned on a previous episode that we had run into each other at a different coffee shop, and he said, well, let's go on a date. I said, okay. I've known this guy for years, really nice guy, did not think we were the right fit, have never thought that. Happy to go on a date though, and it was really nice to catch up. You know, I've talked about men generally being early to a date. He was considerably late, which was fine. I was just doing work anyway. We were just at a coffee shop. It was surprising based on the kudos that I've given to men and based on this guy's personality of all people to be late. It was surprising to me that he was the one, but it was fine. It was nice to catch up. I don't think we're the right fit. I've never thought that, but I enjoyed chatting with him for a little bit. And then I just stayed at the coffee shop. We were at Caliber. Lots of my dates are happening at Caliber, by the way, which is convenient for me. It's very close to my house, and I love Caliber. So he left to go do his work. I stayed to do my own work. There was a really cute guy there that I was going to try to, like, I don't know, say something to, but he left too quickly before I had an opportunity. I think he was just on his lunch break or something. So I didn't get to talk to him. I did ask a guy I'd gone out with a couple times a few months ago if he wanted to go grab dinner, and he wasn't available, which is fine. I enjoyed the couple dates I went on with him, but the follow through was not really there. So that may just still be a pattern. I mean, I know he was out of town, but he didn't say, let's go out again when I get back or anything. So that ship has probably sailed, but good thing he wasn't available because then I swiped and I saw the DC guy. So, like I mentioned earlier, I matched with this guy that I went on one date with in DC 5 years ago. Literally during COVID 2020, we went and got ice cream and walked around DC or something. I mean, it was limited what you could do in 2020 in DC. I liked him back then. He is tall, and if you've been to DC, it's a lot of short kings, but he's 6'4". Dark hair, good looking, smart. I remember him being a little mysterious. I thought he might work in intelligence or something because he said he worked in the travel industry and he was just kind of vague about it. So I thought he was like not telling me the whole story. But we had a good date. I liked him and we never went out again. I don't know why. He never asked me out again. Well, that was the end of that. Fast forward 5 years, he's here for work and we match again. And I messaged him. I said, you were one of the only dates I enjoyed in DC. And he said, well, I'm here for work. Do you want to get together? He said he was considering leaving DC and moving to Tennessee was one of the states he was considering. After talking to him, I don't think he's considering it real seriously, but it was fine. We had a good date. I still like him. I would go out with him again, but he's not trying to do long distance. I don't think he's looking for a relationship, period. But he is smart and good looking and just fun to hang out with. So I was glad I did that. And he flew back. He said, it was great to catch up. And I said, yeah, see you in another 5 years. So this was my second date of these 40 days, but I don't think it really counts since the first one was not only not during these 40 days, but was also 5 years ago in a different state. Now we're at Friday. I did not have a date lined up. I was tired. It's hard to find day dates sometimes during the week. So I honestly didn't try very hard. I went to Edible, Nashville, Edible, Tennessee. It's a magazine, and they have some farm dinners every year. It's just open air, beautiful table setting, gourmet meal, delicious cocktails. And I've wanted to go for a while, and I did a giveaway with them on the tip jar, so I had tickets. Well, we were supposed to get a tornado that night, per usual. We're always supposed to get a tornado. So I kind of thought it would be canceled, and then I was just going to go out to a bar and see if I could meet somebody. But it wasn't canceled, and good thing. It ended up being a gorgeous night, and it was so fun. The food was delicious. The table was beautiful. I really loved talking to everybody around me. Shout out to Rachel, Bailey, Annie, and Taylor, my table mates. We just had a great conversation, and I really enjoyed it and was very glad I went. I went by myself, which was not my intention, but I couldn't find a friend to go and didn't want to take a date to that. It was too long. So I just went by myself and had a great time and was so glad I did it. I did end up talking to some of the vendors there. I've tried to slide into a couple of their DMs. That has not worked yet. So I don't know if we can count this as a date, but I did try. I wasn't completely ignoring my mission, but it was really fun. If you ever have a chance to go to one of Edible's dinners, either the farm dinner or they do a creek dinner, you should go. It was a lovely experience. They do a great job. Saturday, we're calling this guy the talker because he was. So we matched, I think just on Friday, and he sent me, it sounded like a form email. Like he just plugs in different things for whoever he's talking to. He said, I know we just matched. I'd be happy to move at your pace, but if you're free tomorrow, we can go here at 1 o'clock, here at 4 o'clock. Here are the Google Map links. Let me know. Not the approach I would have taken, not the approach I would have accepted outside of this experience. But I was like, well, I need a date for Saturday anyway. I'm free. Let's go. So we went to the 1 o'clock option, which was lunch at Fat Bites. Again, convenient. It's near my house, which kudos to him. I think he picked that on intentionally. So we go and we're talking. This is one of those that I'm trying to evaluate as we go along. Okay, I'm not immediately interested in this person, but is this worth exploring more? So we're talking, he's very close to his mother, sometimes a red flag, but I am also thinking, but we're at the age where you do have elderly parents and you have to care for them more. Like things kind of shift back. So maybe that's all that's going on. Well, he continues to talk about it and he said, but she really respects my boundaries, so on and so forth. And he said, like today, I had to rearrange my plans with her because we were coming to lunch and she was totally fine. And I said, but you suggested lunch. We didn't have to do lunch. If you had plans with your mom, this was your idea. He said, oh, I know. I'm not blaming you. But I just thought that was so weird. I'm glad your mom was cool with you rearranging your plans, but why did you suggest this in the first place? And then why are you making a point of saying she was cool with you rescheduling it? It was just weird. I don't know. Maybe you'll be like, no, that's fine. You're reading too much into that. But I thought it was weird. Nevertheless, we continue to talk. Towards the end, I find out he's been married. And I asked, you've been married before? And he said, well, how much do you want to know about it? Bear in mind, this is first date. All I need is like nothing. I mean, you don't have to tell me anything that you don't want to tell me, but I'm thinking like, yeah, we were married for X number of years. It didn't work out. Or we were married and this one thing happened. We've been divorced for 4 years. Whatever. Like a sentence or two. That's all I need. He goes into a 10-minute spiel about how cheating is such a big deal to him because of his parents and so on and so forth. And finally, he just keeps hemming and hawing and he's like, I don't know how much of this you need or want to know. And so finally, I just said, so she cheated on you. You got divorced. And he said, yes. That's all I needed to know. And I don't know if that was the most sensitive way for me to approach it, but literally that's all I needed to know. And I felt like he was making himself so uncomfortable about explaining the situation. It's like, buddy, you don't need to go into any detail at all. Just like a sentence. And let's move on. He also told me that they'd been to couples therapy and he'd been to couples therapy 4 times with different relationships. And each one, it ended after 1 session. The girl ended it. Well, that is peculiar. I don't know what to attribute that to. He did give me a little explanation of what happened in each, but what I'm not hearing from any of these stories is a lot of personal accountability. It was a lot of, this is what they did, and this is why we needed to go to therapy, and this is why it didn't work out on their end. And so I said, okay, so you've been to couples therapy. Have you ever been to therapy on your own? And he said, well, no, I'm very self-reflective and I just don't have any blind spots. It's like, well, we all have blind spots. That is why they're called blind, because we don't know about them. And he said, well, I think somebody would have pointed it out to me. Perhaps, but it was just mind-boggling to me that he was willing to go to therapy as a couple, but not as an individual, which again, to me sounds like I think it's the other person's problem. So if the other person is not in the scenario, then I don't need to go. To me, also, when there is a pattern and you are the common denominator, there's probably a blind spot. There's probably something to work through. Of course, I didn't say any of that. This is a first date. I'm not his therapist. I don't need to get into all this. But okay, your situation with your mom, whatever. The fact that one of the things that didn't work out with these 4 women is she was concerned about you prioritizing your mother over her. That's category 1. But to me, the bigger issue is that you think everybody else needs therapy, but not you. So the date was ending then, and he asked me, do you have any deal breakers? Cheating is one for him. I said, it's kind of like the Supreme Court justice said, I'll know it when I see it. But I don't think there's anything I could just ask you that based on your response, I say that is a deal breaker. But in my head, I'm thinking this entire conversation has been a deal breaker. So anyway, again, nice guy, but I'm seeing red flags here. And I already was on the fence about him, not sure I was interested. So these red flags mixed in, definitely not. He did want to go on a second date and I just said, thank you. I don't think we're the right fit. Hope you find your person. No harm, no foul. But no, like I personally think everyone should go to therapy. I personally do think that. But I definitely think if you believe other people should go to therapy, you should go yourself. So later that day, I went to Scoreboard near Opry Mills, my favorite bar in all of Nashville. It tends to attract an older crowd, so I feel very hot and young there again. I love it. One of my favorite tribute bands, shout out Rubik's Groove, they were playing there. Scoreboard was doing a crawfish boil, which was super fun. So my friend and I went. She left before the band started. I stayed. If nothing else, I was going to listen to the band and have fun. But I thought, well, I'll try to see if there's somebody I can chat with while I'm here. It was slim pickings. So there was 1 or 2 guys that were my age that were like sitting across the bar from me. I did end up talking to them at the end of the night. I did get one number, which I think I was supposed to follow up with and never did, but I I think it's okay. After I talked to him, I was like, I don't know. I'm not really feeling this anymore. But I did get his number. There was also an older gentleman who looks like Liam Neeson, tall, very good looking, silver fox. I think he was a hot commodity because I was talking to him and he was polite, but not into it. And then some women walked by who were pretty. They were older than me, attractive women. And he like kind of punched one in the shoulder or something. So I think maybe they'd been chatting. So struck out with Liam Neeson, which was unfortunate. But still, we're flexing these skills. We're flexing these muscles. What's the expression? I'm mixing my metaphors here. Anyway, practicing these skills, flexing these muscles. Is that what I'm trying to say? So it was fun regardless. Like I said, I love that band. Did meet one of the guys in the band. The band and I know each other through social media, but they don't know me. And so I introduced myself and that was fun. But no luck, really, at Scoreboard. That's okay. So I am currently 1 date behind, even counting my visits to bars or supplementary things that weren't dates per se, but I'm counting it as a date. Factoring those in, I'm still 1 behind. So hopefully I'll catch up. If I go on 1 or 2 dates in Alaska, that'll catch me up unless I fall further behind. We'll see. But pretty good to be halfway through and only 1 date behind. Next week, I'm feeling a lot more positive. Next week is looking much better. I have another nominated date. And again, barring the friend of a friend who made me cry, I like the nominated ones because it's all out on the table. Everybody knows, and it just takes some of the pressure off and we can just have fun. And again, if we like each other, great. If not, it's a fun date. No harm, no foul. So I have another nominated date this week that I am looking forward to. He's made plans. He just seems really fun. And my friend who nominated him, I trust her judgment. So I'm excited about that one. Another friend of a friend, not technically nominated. He's not really dating right now, but he was up for meeting. So that's another one coming up. I'm going to the Nashville Lifestyles Burger Competition, which is always fun. And I think it'll be something different to do on a date that will hopefully breathe life into it other than just like sitting across from each other over a beer for an hour and a half. So I think this week is looking up. I'm feeling much better. We'll see how it goes. I'll keep you posted. The next episode we're going to have is with Lindsay Taylor. She's a dating coach, a therapist, now dating coach. And we're going to talk about her journey in being single a little bit later in life and how that led into dating coaching, some of her tips and tricks, some of the things she's seeing in her practice. And I'm going to flat out ask her, like, what do you think about the phrase, you'll find him when you're not looking? Because obviously I am looking, and I've always hated that cliche, hated it, along with so many others. I'm going to ask her what are some tips that you would give somebody who is discouraged. So it's just going to be a really good conversation. I'm very excited about it. I hope you will tune in. In the meantime, and send in those good and bad date stories. Please nominate someone or send me their info if you'd like me to slide into their DMs. Remember to like and subscribe. 40 Dates in 40 Days, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, 40 Dates Podcast, the number 40 Dates Podcast. And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, wish me luck.